He is the king of country music, not just a country singer. Over the course of more than 40 years, George Strait has sung on some of the best country songs ever. Many people have been moved by his songs, from Amarillo by Morning to Check Yes or No. But now something has happened that no one was ready for. People who are fans recently heard something that broke their hearts and left them confused and shocked. George Strait has always been known for being calm and peaceful. He never looked for trouble or news. This new story about him, on the other hand, has gone popular on the internet. It's being talked about by everyone, but no one seems to know the answer. What could happen to a man who couldn't be hurt? That person seems very strong and calm. How did they get involved in something so bad? Early life and work. His birth date is May 18, 1952, and the place where he was born is Poteet, Texas. In Frio County, in the close town of Pearsall where he grew up, things were plain, simple, and tied to tradition. His dad, John Byron Strait Sr., taught math at a junior high school. On the weekends they went to their 2,000-acre cattle ranch near Big Wells, Texas, to get away from the school week. George's childhood was affected by the land. As a child he helped out on the ranch and learned early on how important it is to work hard. Things weren't always easy though. When George's parents split up, he was in the 4th grade. His mother left, and his sister Pensy went with her. That meant that George and his bigger brother John Buddy Jr. had to be raised by their dad. By sticking together, they were able to keep the family alive, at school and on the land. The first time George played music was when he was a young kid. The Stoics, a rock and roll house band from Pearsall High School, were his band. George was caught up in the British invasion, as were most teens in the 1960s. He loved the Beatles and other rock bands of that time very much. George used to say that the Beatles were big. I paid a lot of attention to them, and all of those other big bands at the time. But George eventually found his true calling in country music, even though rock music had interested him at first. Over time his choice changed. Country music stars like Hank Thompson, Lefty Frizzle, Merle Haggard, George Jones and Hank Williams became his new music. He also liked Bob Wills and even copied the smooth, polished way Frank Sinatra sang. George didn't spend his whole youth listening to country music radio, which may come as a surprise. Instead he would rather listen to news shows and reports for farmers. For him, country music didn't exist on the radio. It lived in live shows. In those days live country music shows were held in almost every Texas town, and George went to all of them. This is how it all began on the back roads of Texas, in the nights between school and ranch work, and near the music venues in the area. The quiet, hard-working kid from Pearsall would become the king of the country. No one knew that at the time. However, George Strait was already unique from the start. The daily life of George Strait. There has been just as much drama and sometimes tragedy in George Strait's life off the stage as there was in his work as a singer. So in December 1971, he and his high school sweetheart Norma sneaked across the border into Mexico and walked down the aisle on tiptoe. They wanted a fancy church wedding. Another year in October, they had their first child, Jennifer. 3 years after that, in 1981, their son, George Harvey Strait Jr., who they just called Bubba, was born. In 1986, something terrible happened. Jennifer, who was 13 years old, died in a car accident outside of San Marcos on June 25. The Strait family was deeply saddened by the loss, and George's views on privacy and fame will never be the same. They wanted to honor their daughter in a good way, so they set up the Jennifer Lynn Strait Foundation. This foundation secretly sends donations to children's charities in San Antonio, serving as a living memorial to their daughter, after graduating from Texas A&M, and going on to work as a team roper in competitive rodeos. Bubba was old enough to share his dad's love of living the cowboy life. George even caught Bubba in the act at the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, in 2006. He quickly ran backstage and put on his own show that night, which sold out. In 2009, George's older brother John Byron Strait, better known as Buddy Strait, died at the age of 58. This was another terrible loss in the Straits family. Along the way, George kept relying on his faith, his family, and the work ethic he learned on the land. The fact that he has worked with Wrangler for a long time shows the same sense of loyalty. As of 2010, he was a spokesperson for the Wrangler National Patriot Program. This program aims to bring attention to and raise money for the families of dead or hurt U.S. soldiers and their families, he said. When they came to me with a way to help our veterans, I couldn't say no. His country roots are also shown in farm supply ads, which is another nod to his cowboy roots. The Strait family tree keeps getting bigger. The Straits family had a son named George Harvey Strait III in February 2012. Bubba and his wife Tamara are proud to call him the king of country. Grandpa George. Roping is still a hobby for me. The George Strait Team Roping Classic was held every year from 1983 to 2017, at first in Kingsville and then at the San Antonio Rose Palace, where the best ropers in the business competed for big prizes and bragging rights. George is not on a horse. He is in his San Antonio-based Gulfstream G450 plane, tail number N518GS. After Hurricane Harvey hit Texas in 2017, that plane took him and Governor Greg Abbott all over the state to lead relief efforts in towns by the coast that had been badly damaged. He stays busy in the hill country too through charity work. On the west side of Bourne, George and his longtime friend Tom Cusick started the Vaqueros Del Mar Invitational Golf Tournament and Show. Since 2012, the event has given more than $5 million to David Faraday's Troops First Foundation, which helps families of wounded soldiers. The Texas Legislative Conference gave Strait the 2018 Texan of the Year award for all of his hard work. George Strait shows that cowboy values like loyalty, persistence and kindness go beyond any #1 record. He has been through personal sadness, rodeo excitement, and never-ending acts of kindness. Make false claims of sexual abuse and stalking. There was a strange and scary story going around on Facebook in 2018. Someone wrote that Emmylou Hayes, a woman, had said that George Strait was following her and bothering her. The post quickly gained a lot of attention, and most fans were worried and confused because George Strait is usually very polite and quiet, but this story wasn't true. The website Snopes looked into the story very carefully. They looked for proof that the woman existed, and that George Strait had ever been involved with such claims. Snopes did a full investigation but could not find any proof of either the woman's presence or the claims. It turned out that the whole story was made up, a scam. A police record or court case was never filed against George Strait for this, and the rumor was not backed up by a reliable source. It was just a story that someone made up and then spread on the internet. When people hear these kinds of false stories, they hurt their reputations because they include serious charges like stalking or harassment. During his long career, George Strait has kept his record very clean. This false story showed how quickly information can spread on social media. Most of his fans stuck by him because they knew how good he is and how much he values other people. In the end, this event was shown to be false. In other words, it was proven to be wrong. It's a great example of why you should check the facts before you share or believe a story on the internet, especially if it could hurt someone's image. If George Strait said Beyoncé's project was trash, then it must be true. Some Facebook jokes started going around a few years ago saying that George Strait had said Beyoncé's Cowboy Carter project was trash. Fans of both of these singers were shocked and even let down by this news. Beyoncé is a huge star all over the world, and George Strait is a legend in country music. The idea that Strait would publicly attack Beyoncé in such a mean way caught on quickly. The thing is, it wasn't true. The quote came from the website Saving Country Music, which is known for checking the accuracy of country music news, looked into it. They learned that the whole account began as a funny Facebook page. That means it wasn't a real interview or comment, but something made up for fun or as a parody. George Strait has never said anything bad about Beyoncé or her work in an interview, on a recording, or from a trusted source. Strait has never said anything at all about Beyoncé in public. The meme was only wrong and harmful. It's easy for this kind of false information to spread quickly online, especially when it's between two big names in different types of music. Fans often have strong reactions without checking to see if what they're reading is true, which can lead to drama and confusion that isn't needed. There is no sign that George Strait would say something like that about another artist. His success has been built on professionalism and respect. It's important to remember not to accept or share posts that go viral without first making sure they are true. In order to clear things up, George Strait never said that Beyoncé's project was trash. There is no truth to that at all, and both artists should be praised for their work in their own fields. The dispute over the Trump train gesture. In 2024, at one of George Strait's big arena shows, there was a moment that some fans found interesting, and that caused some debate on social media. Strait made a quick arm-pumping dance move while singing along that some people thought was a nod to former President Donald Trump. Some of Trump's fans call this move the Trump train move. A lot of people were upset about this small act because George Strait doesn't usually talk about politics in public during his shows or events. Taste of Country reported the news and printed the different opinions fans had about the act. Some saw it as a clear political message, while others thought it was just Strait's usual stage presence, and had nothing to do with politics at all. George Strait himself didn't say anything about what happened. He neither denied nor confirmed that the dance move had a political meaning, and more importantly, he never made any public political support for the move, so the whole idea that he was showing support for Trump was mostly just a guess. It's not uncommon for fans and followers to see small things that celebrities do, and somehow think they have political meaning, especially in this very political world. However, since the subject hasn't said or done anything directly, these tries are just guesses. George Strait's success has been built around his music and shows, not on politics. That didn't change because of this. He most likely did the arm-pumping move as part of his stage act and not to make a political point. Thus, even though some fans thought they caught a pro-Trump shout-out, there's not much proof that George Strait was making a political point. Still, it's just an interesting guess, and not a fact. Murder on Music Row makes a lot of noise. George Strait and Alan Jackson sang Murder on Music Row together at the CMA Awards in. The song was written by Larry Cordell and Larry Shell and is very rude. The words say that someone killed country music and left it on the street, and they blame Nashville's big record labels for focusing on pop sounds and ignoring traditional ones. Strait and Jackson also recorded the song for Strait's 2000 Greatest Hits album, Latest Greatest Straightest Hits. The song was played on the radio so much that it made it to the country charts, even though it was never released as a single. The song caused a huge stir in the country music world right away. Folk music fans cheered, saying that Strait and Jackson were bravely defending fiddle and steel country in a time when smooth production and crossover sounds were popular. But younger artists and people who work in the business felt like they were being picked on. Some reviewers said the performance was rude, but others said that styles change all the time and there's nothing wrong with combining country and pop styles. Saving Country Music wrote in 2023 that the duet brought together fans who felt like Nashville was moving too far in the direction of pop music. Even though we live in the age of streaming, the debate is still very heated. In 2024, when the song's 25th anniversary was being celebrated, music writers talked about the uproar again. A lot of people said that the same reasons still apply today, when country stars work with rappers, EDM artists, and TikTok stars. Fans on social media still talk about Murder on Music Row when they think modern country music has moved too far away from sound and story. Strait and Jackson have both said they're sorry for the song, but Jackson and Strait both say they just love traditional country music. The duet brought up a conflict that still exists in the business. In one corner are artists who are willing to try new things. In the other, conservatives are afraid of losing the roots of their country. People all over the world know the tug of war from Murder on Music Row. Its chant is still played whenever the old school versus new school debate comes up, even after more than 20 years. Some people don't like that George doesn't write his own songs. One thing that people have long said about George Strait is that he doesn't write most of his own songs. While this has been brought up by fans and reviewers over the years, they have said it makes them wonder how real his music is, since many artists today, especially in the country and pop genres, also write their own songs. This was talked about again in 2023, when Saving Country Music wrote about it again. Someone could say that Strait depends too much on other songwriters, which hurts the credibility of his music. They don't think it's fair to call someone an honest speaker if the stories they're singing weren't really told by them. But Strait's supporters,
and there are a lot of them don't agree. They say it doesn't matter who wrote the song as long as it's performed well. That's Strait's voice, and she tells stories through music in a calm but strong way. It takes a lot of skill for him to choose the right songs and make them come to life. Frank Sinatra, who is also known as one of the best entertainers of all time but didn't write most of his own songs, is often compared to him by his fans. Strait has never been one to pout a lot about the complaints. He thinks it's always been about picking the right song with the right message and then putting it across in a way that people can relate to. He has had more than 60 #1 songs, so it's hard to say that the formula hasn't worked. Yes, it's true that George Strait hasn't written most of the songs he appears on. That might not have been the point at all. How those songs make you feel is what matters, and Strait's record does that. But that movie star look from the 2024 CMA Awards, a short camera cut of George Strait at the 2024 CMA Awards, caused a lot more buzz than anyone thought it would. While they were doing a fast-paced mix of country and rap songs, the cameras cut to Strait, who was sitting in the crowd quietly. There was no smile or applause on his face. He was just looking ahead. That video went popular very quickly. Fans of social media spread a lot of conspiracy ideas on the web. Many people said Strait's face showed that he was disgusted by what was happening, which was exactly how real country fans felt. Soon after, memes popped up that made it look like classic country artists didn't like the new sound that mixed different genres. Yahoo! Entertainment heard all the noise and put together the talk. Some fans said it was a protest that didn't make a sound, while others joked that he was just tired or lost in thought. Strait never said anything about it, so no one really knows the truth. In response to the reports, he didn't say anything. As always, he kept quiet and let the World Wide Web have its turn. The part of the show quickly became a cultural icon. Some people thought it was a funny take on the constant battle between old and new country music. For some, it was way over the top. In the end, being quiet doesn't always mean you hate someone. It's possible that you're not really interested, or that you're watching something else. To sum up, George Strait's poker face went viral, but it remains to be seen if it really did mean something. It shows how quickly one look on the face can turn into a full-blown internet story, especially when that story involves a famous person from your country. Fans felt snubbed when George Strait didn't go to Texas. At least at first, George Strait fans were thrilled when he added more cities to his 2025 stadium tour. But one thing stood out when the list came out. Texas did not have a single wedding. That might not be a big deal for most writers. King of Country George Strait, who is from Texas at his heart, found it very strange. Texas fans didn't hold back. People were upset, confused, and even shocked on social media. How could he go all over the country and not visit his home state? That's where he made his name and where most of his fans live. The local news joined in too. It was called a snub in my San Antonio, which echoed how many Texans felt. The lack was felt deeply in a state that has always been important to Strait's music and culture. Most people thought there would be at least 1 or 2 big shows in San Antonio, Houston or Dallas. Texas has been Strait's home state for decades, and Eaton-DT Stadium holds the record for the largest indoor concert in the United States. He knows this site very well. It was not made clear why Texas would be left out, which made things even more murky. Some people were still hoping that a show in Texas would be announced later. Others wondered if it was just a problem with the schedule. Some people even joked that George might be keeping Texas from something big, but since no one could prove it, the anger stayed. In the end, it wasn't a scandal, but it made people feel something. Strait's music is a source of pride for many Texas fans, so skipping a stop in Texas on such a big tour seemed like missing the family gathering. There was a lot of talk about that choice, whether it was temporary or long-term, and made everyone remember how much Texans love George Strait. Concerns about the environment are raised by George Strait's private jet. George Strait doesn't have a very public life, but his private plane has caused some people to wonder about his lifestyle. Climate Jet said in a study from 2022 that Strait's Gulfstream G450 plane put out about 423 tons of carbon dioxide in a year. Just to give you an idea, That's more carbon pollution than 27 normal Americans would make in a whole year. This news made a lot of noise online, especially among people who care about the environment. Yahoo News on celebrity net worth and lifestyle also wrote about the problem, which made people pay even more attention to Strait's tour's carbon impact. It is important to note that George Strait has not responded to this attack in public. To fly on a private plane for comfort, privacy and ease of scheduling is normal for most famous people with long careers and fame around the world. In a time when climate change is becoming a bigger problem, it's getting harder and harder to ignore the environmental cost of these rich lives. Some fans of Strait came to his defense by saying that many touring acts use private planes to keep up with their busy schedules and stay safe. Others were let down because they thought that famous people should lead by example and cut down on emissions, or at least pay to reduce their carbon footprint. So far the criticism hasn't been linked to any changes in how people move across the straits. It's a small voice in the bigger conversation about how famous people move and their responsibility to the world. It was a good lesson though that even country stars like George Strait can be criticized by the public, especially when it comes to how their choices affect the world. The news that scared fans. Country music star George Strait recently scared fans when he took a seat in the middle of a show. The artist is on tour with Chris Stapleton right now and is 72 years old, but something strange happened at his first show in Philadelphia. George looked like he was having trouble and had to sit down during the show. Soon a music video was posted on TikTok, and the person who did it added captions to it. George says his back hurt, so he won't be moving like he usually does. George had said that in a light-hearted and funny way, but fans were still worried. Many people wrote in the comments that they hoped George would get better quickly, and that they hoped his back was okay. In recent years George hasn't been playing as often, but when he does it's always a big deal. People love him because he cares so much about every song. It's clear that George still loves acting a lot, but after this latest incident with back pain, many people are starting to wonder how long he'll be able to tour. You can be sure George didn't leave them guessing. During the same show he shared a touching moment with the crowd. He said, "I have about 5 good years to sing my songs to you people. It's been about 50 years but I still enjoy it as much as I did when I was younger." In what followed he said something that made people cry. "When I walk through those curtains and see your happy smiles, I don't put my feet back on the ground until I get on that bus. I can't keep doing this for much longer. I figure a few." That sincere moment struck fans so hard. It reminded everyone that even though George Strait feels bigger than life, he's human, and age and illness can catch up to anyone. Nevertheless, one thing's certain: George Strait's passion for his fans and music has never diminished an iota. We wish him all the rest and care he requires to continue doing what he loves, because artists like him come but once in a lifetime, and we're certainly not ready to bid him farewell. Awards and honors. George Strait's resume is so full of records and accolades that it sounds almost unbelievable. Yet each and every headline is fact. Let's trace the highlights in plain, easy to understand language. The numbers first. Strait has more #1 albums and singles in country music than anyone else, along with the largest number of gold, platinum and multi-platinum plaques ever awarded the genre. Stretch across genre, and he remains 11th overall on the list of #1 albums in all genres of music. As for gold and platinum certifications, those glitzy indicators of massive sales, only the Beatles and Elvis Presley rank above him. Altogether, Strait has sold roughly 70 million records in the United States, which makes him the 12th best-selling artist in American record history. That's an astonishing degree of staying power. And then there is the chart success. Since 2013, Strait has been the world record holder for most #1 hits on all Billboard charts, with 60 of his tunes reaching that #1 position. More impressive still, he is the only artist in any genre to have had a top 10 hit each year for 30 consecutive years. He's also just a few top 10s from Eddie Arnold's all-time record of 92. He's a virtual one-man trophy factory. Strait has won 22 CMA awards, which includes the prestigious Entertainer of the Year award in 1989, 1990 and 2013. the first and only artist to win that award in 3 decades. He's also the leader in overall CMA nominations as well as consecutive nominations. At the ACM's Academy of Country Music, he duplicates those marks for wins and nominations. In 2006, Strait was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, an honor typically reserved for acts far beyond their chart-topping prime. He was just the second performer, following Eddie Arnold, to be awarded that plaque when still actively amassing hits. 4 years later, Billboard did the math on 25 years of data, and named him the top country artist of the previous quarter century. The ACM went even further, naming him Artist of the Decade for the 2000s and 2008, a prize previously given to legends like Loretta Lynn, Alabama, and Garth Brooks. Strait's 2013 Entertainer of the Year award created another record. He became the oldest artist to win it, and he has the longest gap between wins on that award, 23 years. He is also tied with Merle Haggard for most male vocalist of the year awards. One of his most iconic live performances was on June 1, 2013, when 70,000 fans filled San Antonio's Alamo Dome for the midway finale of his 2-year farewell tour. Even the governor attended. Rick Perry took the mic and officially proclaimed May 18 Strait's birthday George Strait Day in Texas for all future years. Add it all up, sales, chart records, awards, and those sold-out concerts, and you understand why so many call him simply the king of country. Few artists across any genre can equal the longevity, consistency, and raw crowd-pleasing strength of George Strait. Thanks for hanging in there until the end. If you like this in-depth look at the legendary career of George Strait, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. It means a lot to us. And if you're looking for more content like this on the artists you love, subscribe to the channel, and turn the notification bell on so you never miss a post. We've got loads more stories coming your way.